You've never seen anything more high tech than me just holding my cell phone up to my microphone for this.
This is the Bladtcast. Welcome to our 2022 Major League Baseball playoff preview. Taking a look at all the teams vying for the World Series, but mostly a way for beaten down Mets fans to manage expectations and prepare for disappointment. Christian Blatt is joined by Salman himself, comedian David Weiss, writer, comedian, and musician David Brody, generator of new content every day, Flobo, Boyce, and author Devin Gordon. So break out your peanuts and Cracker Jacks, crack open an old style, and get ready for a ceremonial first pitch from Christian Blatt.
Hey, thanks, Farad Muhammad. Very fun to get that little intro there. I wrote that more than a month ago, just with the feeling that Mets fans would be a lot less happy than they could be. But we will try to not spend this entire show on the Mets, but it's going to be a lot of it. But welcome to our annual traditional MLB playoff preview episode. As always, I am Christian Blatt. As always, joining me for this episode, the one, the only Salman himself, David Weiss.
Sup, America.
And he joined us in the preseason when we ran things down. And I believe I picked the Atlanta Braves to win the NL East. So I wish I wasn't right, but turned out I was. David Brody, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I think my delay is a little bit less.
It's definitely a lot less.
Maybe not.
And somebody who never makes any delay, the one and only, new content every single day of his life, Flobo Boyce. Welcome, sir.
I am chained to content. No, I'm so glad to be on the show. This is like an institution, so I'm glad to be a part of it.
I know I've tried. You're honestly, you're always like off DJing whenever we do this. I've tried to get you to do this. Flobo, you work too much is what
I'm sorry. What can I do?
And coming back to the Bladtcast, but joining us for this episode for the first time, the author of So Many Ways to Lose, the amazing true story of the New York Mets, the best worst team in sports, a wonderful / heartbreaking, painful read. Devin Gordon, thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you for this well-timed, I think, appearance. Great to be here. Great to be back.
Yeah, and I interviewed you when the book came out early in the 2021 season, which that was there was a lot of hope in the early 2021 season, and I think that as Mets fans, you always have to look at it this way. So the team went 101-61, tied with the Braves for the same record. This is the first year where there's not a game 163 to settle a dead heat atop the division. So that's, makes sense that would be the first year that happened for the Mets. But considering the way last year ended and most of the last 6 years, when we did that preview episode, somebody had handed us an envelope like, well, what do you think about being in the Wild Card Series and winning 101 games and having the batting champ and throwing a combined no-hitter and, coming back with 7 runs in the 9th off the Cardinals and 7 runs in the 9th off the Phillies, you'd be like, oh my God, what a great season. How much fun am I going to have watching that? And it was like fun right up until really that Dodgers series, I think. And then September wasn't fun. Devin, is there any truth to the rumor that you're working on a follow-up ebook called So Many Ways to Lose the NL East, Lose the Division Lead, or some variation on that? Or this really fits perfectly. This could easily be a chapter added to the book, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, everything you described is true. I feel all of those things. I'm in pretty good spirits, all things considered. But the Metsy component of this is the fact that I've, of course, even while feeling delighted for those things, spent 24 hours thinking, if Nick Montaz or Fuentes or whatever the heck his name is had singled one more time in the 8th inning against the Braves, we would have won the division. And I've been doing little things like that. I don't know if you guys have, but when you come that close, you realize that there's like a pitch or a grounder or a single or, a dumb call by an umpire that literally would have won the division for the Mets.
Yeah, you can go back to last weekend in Atlanta and say, if Chris Bassett hadn't hit a batter to load the bases.
Yes.
There's lots of little things like that. There was that huge. It's very easy to circle that series against the Cubs where they got swept. There was the play where, a base hit Nimmo on the base paths. And, there were no outs. And then I believe there were 2, so it's like, oh, it's very easy. And look, fans of any team, they can highlight those moments. I think somebody was going to chime in on this, but I'll start with you, David Brody. Just sort of, yes, great accomplishment, but boy, there's so much what if to look back at. And like, you can't even pick the top 2 or 3 because there's so many other things that easily could have fallen another way. Right, David?
To me, the biggest that caused them the division was the trade deadline. You can't watch everyone else in the NL East pick up a lot of quality players, and then your big accomplishment is Darren Ruff. I mean, you look at JD Davis's stats post-trade, and he's just right. So you got Vogelback, who average at best, hits an occasional home run. Tyler Naquin. Okay, what they needed was a full-time DH. They didn't get one. They needed a catcher who could hit. They didn't get one. They needed a solid bullpen arm. They got Givens, who isn't a solid bullpen arm for them. And they let Robinson and Syndergaard go to Philadelphia for basic. So, yeah, to me, that's the turning point.
I don't think Syndergaard would have been there, but sorry,
you're going to win.
But I agree.
$300 million payroll.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm reminded of the lag time, but yeah, I agree that.
No, go ahead. I don't think the Mets would have gotten Syndergaard. I just don't like him going to the Phillies.
Right. And David Peterson was a guy that I think everybody was like, wait, is that his name? We've got his name. Robertson. But Robertson. David Robertson was a guy that everybody's like, well, how does Philly end up getting him? Because there were definitely a lot of situations. Now, of course, he did kind of spectacularly blow a lead against the Mets that they came back with a lot of runs late in the game. But still, that was the kind of arm he wanted. And I mean, look, you weren't going to add Juan Soto at the deadline, but there are definitely better things that could have been done. And everybody said it at the time. David Weiss, you and I, just after that trade deadline, I think it was like, no, that wasn't enough. It wasn't even close. It wasn't like, it wasn't like they addressed one problem, but not another. No, they just didn't.
They didn't address any of the problems.
Anything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd be the one person. I don't want to cut off other people from jumping in, but I'm the one defender of the trade deadline.
Absolutely, Devin. Tell him, Devin.
I don't think trade deadlines materially impact teams very much. It didn't even materially impact the Padres, and they made far and away the biggest splash at the deadline.
Very true.
And, I often think that what you see as the deficiency or the thing that cost you is sometimes, more a reflection of how you look at teams and how you look at problems. I look at it and think, okay, yeah, we could have added a bullpen arm. I don't need to watch any more Tyler Naquin at bats ever again. And I probably won't have to watch any more Darren Ruff at bats, thank God. But I look at Starling Marte breaking his finger as a far bigger factor in the Mets not winning this division than the delta between Michael Givens and David Robertson. So I have a hard time getting too upset about that, just because I feel like what you're saying is if the Mets had been more aggressive at the deadline, they would have won 150 games, 140 games.
If the Mets had filled one of those spots, a DH, an arm, or a catcher, Marte's breaking his finger and being out would not be such a big factor.
Right.
That's true. That's fair.
I agree with that it would have helped. But to Devin's point, it definitely was like, it definitely, even at the time, when he started not coming back, it started to get those, Dwayne Sanchez was in a taxi cab accident in 2006 before the playoffs. That at the moment you're like, and I agree that, a lot of the splashes at the trade deadline, the Padres being a great example, whereas less splashy, the Braves added Raciel Iglesias. If they didn't have him, they would have lost some of those leads before Jansen ever got the chance to blow the leads. They wouldn't have gotten to him so that he could blow the leads. But I think that because of the year 2015 that the Mets got Cespedes at the trade deadline and the immediate impact he had, I think that that's the thinking is like, well, every year there's a Cespedes out there. And I mean, there was Juan Soto out there, but boy, you would have had to give up a lot. The Padres gave up a lot. And what's his name? The guy that Meneses, who has played for the
30-year-old rookie.
Yeah, he's played in his absence, and he's had a much better season since the trade deadline. So I agree that it doesn't necessarily change things, but I think that losing Sterling Marte
I would rather lose
the top of the first inning, the first game in Pittsburgh, isn't one of those moments that you think is going to be something. And I'm sorry, what were you going to say, David? And don't worry, then Flobo, we'll get to you.
No, I was going to say I would rather lose making the right moves than lose by standing pat.
Sure.
Because at least you've done everything possible, and now like I have this problem now with guys trying to be GMs trying to be the smartest guy in the room all the time. Well, we have these guys. We're going to try and make it with guys who make less money and do this and the stats and the numbers. The bottom line is sometimes you need a blunt instrument to win.
Yeah. Flobo, you're filled with a lot more youthful exuberance than some of us here, but at the same time, you've been a Mets fan, so it's probably aged you consistently. How and you traveled. You have the infinity gauntlet of having seen the Mets this season at all 5 California stadiums.
That's true.
Correct?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was
wow.
the goal. Thankfully, I'm 3-2 for the year. I was there.
By the way, I'm so glad that David Weiss was unable to. I had tickets for the 7-line outing in Oakland, and I just was like, once he couldn't go, I'm like, I'm just going to sell. I was so glad I wasn't there. That was the game that DeGrom got bombed in Oakland.
That's the one I look at. Getting swept by the Cubs, and the Marlins always have our number, and getting swept by the Cubs go, okay, well they're playing for something, right? But that loss was something that by no calculation they thought, even if we did lose, it'd be like a 3-2 game or something like that. But that one to me was good. Thankfully, I went to the Friday game. I don't get too caught up in the deadline. I play a game called Out of the Park Baseball. I'm not sure if you're familiar. It's a GM simulator game. Like basically you pretend you're a GM of a team and you make the trades and do the negotiations yourself. If I'm Flobo Epler and my boss tells me I want growth over 3 to 5 years, I think it did a decent job at the trade deadline. Yeah, you want Juan Soto, but it wasn't win now this year. It was build something now and later. And I still don't understand giving up 4 people for David Ruff, even if he was good. But for what they gave up to what they got, it really wasn't that positive. Tyler Naquin has been spotty at best. I can't knock it for that. But to me, that second game in Oakland was something I almost written off as an automatic win, and it wasn't. And that's the one I go, oh my God, who won that one?
Especially because they scored 4 runs before DeGrom even was on the hill. His whole career, it's like the Mets maybe score 1 or 0 runs for him.
Right.
Yeah, I'm having a hard. I just can't get too worked up about the deadline when we tied for the division, and in September DeGrom lost games against the Cubs and Oakland. I kind of think what we should have done is not lose to the Cubs and Oakland with the best pitcher on earth. Yeah. And those one things, the one thing that goes different. I was just thinking about it. The biggest one that flashed through my mind was the 3-run home run that DeGrom gave up in the 6th inning when he was just rolling. I mean, I couldn't, he was just, and then that 3-run home run ruined it. And pitches like that, when you tie like we did, one pitch. If that pitch doesn't happen, we probably win the division.
Yes.
But one thing I would ask, and one thing that I feel like on the trade deadline conversation is, we focus on what's there and what's available. But to me, the Mets went into the deadline with a disadvantage because they only had top tier talent and nothing below it. And that made it tough to have some deals. And then I also, just let me finish the thought, which is, I think at the deadline, the other thing you don't want to do is make a big mistake when you've got, it's clearly the Javi Baez thing is looking like a big mistake. And I think that
for Detroit,
well, for Detroit too, but for the Mets, that's going to hurt. And when you're a season removed from doing that, and you've already got a really good team, I think you look at it and say, we can't do that 2 seasons in a row. We can't give away 2 blue chip prospects for 2-month runs 2 seasons in a row if we're trying to be the Dodgers. We just can't do that. And That's what relieved me about the deadline, is that they didn't do anything reckless that's going to hurt us in the future.
Right. I mean, I think you can argue with the stats on the season, but a reckless trade, a perfect example would be the Brewers dealing Josh Hader to the Padres. Josh Hader had struggled, and he did struggle when he first went to San Diego. I think he had a 12 ERA at one point. But the point being, you didn't replace him with another quality closer. And everybody saw what happened to the Brewers the last couple of weeks. They just, they
needed a closer.
They needed somebody who could close, and they didn't have like that good 8th inning guy who was ready to kind of take the next step.
Well, let's go get their GM.
We wanted to.
Let's go get that guy.
David Brody, you're actually, of all of us right now, you're the one living in the New York area. And I believe that there'll be an unveiling. Is it tomorrow for the start of the playoffs? There'll be an unveiling of a new Mets song that you've been involved in.
Yeah, it's actually an old Mets song.
Okay.
I had written a song with Lucas Prada, who's a local guy here in the New York area, grew up in Queens. He was a Mets fan. He had a big local hit on pop radio called And She Said. It's about a girl. And I contacted him in 2006, and I changed it to And We Say Let's Go Mets. It's got some players' names in it, and it was a big hit. In fact, the Mets played it at the stadium, and during the 2006 season, if you called Shea Stadium, the on-hold music was that song.
Nice.
And so we actually got CDs printed, permission from Major League Baseball. We sold them at Shea Stadium, and it was a fairly big hit. Got a lot of news write-ups. He did all kinds of TV appearances. He did the Mets did a street parade. He was part of it, Lucas. And so it had some success. And in 2015, when the Mets went to the World Series, fans wanted us to update the song, which we did. And I thought at that time, all right, well, it's a 9-year-old song, but people seem to like it. So we'll update it. We'll put new players' names in and tweak some things. And we released it again, and the Mets liked it again, and it got airplay again. And so here we are 16 years later, and Twitter and DMs have been hitting both of us up saying, where's the update? And I'm thinking to myself, God, it's a 16-year-old song. I can write a new song, but people want to hear it. So I rewrote it. I took a snippet of the trumpets from Diaz. I worked that into the song, and we're going to release it tomorrow afternoon or evening through my social media at David Brody, and through his, which is Real Lucas Prada with a T. And we'll probably host it on some website, but it'll be out. So it's a new old song.
Yeah, right in time for the start of the playoffs. What is the feeling in New York? So there'll be this song for people to kind of get excited about again, and then actually being there. Obviously, you're going to have everybody's going to talk about Aaron Judge. You're going to have a lot of those conversations. But for the Mets fans that are out there walking around, are they just sort of beaten down but trying to persevere, or what's the vibe that you're getting?
Well, if you see the Mr. Met on the cover of So Many Ways to Lose, that seems to be the vibe with
Really?
Mets fans. So if you listen to New York sports radio at WFAN, there you go, ESPN radio, or if you look at blog posts, obviously Aaron Judge is the story here. If the Mets had won the division by 10 games, Aaron Judge would still be the story. Although, interestingly enough, Aaron Judge and Pete Alonso have the same amount of RBIs. So,
nice.
Which is the more important statistic? The statistic is RBIs. It doesn't matter how you got there. So, Alonso, even with Aaron Judge. As far as Mets fans, it's one of those things where you say, if they had come from behind 10 games down and just fell short at the end, you'd be excited and think, all right, they're on the up and they gave it their best shot and it was exciting. But the fact that they were up and they lost games or lost ground and finished where they did, you're finishing on a downer, right? You're finishing where your two best starters are not pitching well. Your third best starter choked. Your fifth starter probably won't start a game, Carrasco in the postseason.
Oh, yeah.
And and Marte's out. And so, I feel good about beating the Padres, but after that, I don't think Mets fans feel great yet.
Bassett did not choke. And I hate to play the blame game, but if you watch that game back, Homeboy McCann was tipping pitches so hard.
Well,
he made it completely obvious. Yeah.
let me interject because I forget who the base
He
runner
did stand
was.
up on the high pitches.
He stood up for the high pitch, and whoever the second base the runner was, he touched his head, and that's not stealing signs. That's not what the Astros did.
Nope.
That's the Mets needed
That's
to be
baseball.
smarter.
Yeah, it's tipping pitches.
And why McCann was starting that game, I guess Bassett prefers throwing to him than Nito.
Yes,
but there was no
Bassett
reason
doesn't
for
like
McCann
throwing
to
to
start
Nito.
that. Yeah, and it should be like, you know what, we don't like you getting tossed in the second inning. So but I agree that in general, going into that game, I did feel good about Bassett. What I do think was a mistake was that Bassett was supposed to start the Friday game. DeGrom was going to get a little bit more rest and go on Sunday. But then Buck, and we'll talk a little bit about Buck. And don't worry, we're going to talk about the other 29 teams. Well, no, we're going to talk about the 11 teams making the playoffs. So the idea to move DeGrom up so that he could then potentially pitch game 162 is one of the flaws with Buck Showalter, is that he's playing like Mr. Spock. He's playing the 3D level chess. He's worrying about winning on this level, but if you don't win down here, it's not going to matter how well you're doing up there. And that's basically for David Weiss and all the nerds of both baseball and Star Trek. Devin, what I wanted to talk about is, so they end up in those wild card series, which is what we're going to focus on in a moment. And of course, there's the point where you're like, okay, they're going to really be the wild card. You just have to deal with it. And there was a chance of like, okay, so they could end up matched against the Padres, or there was a moment where it could have been the Phillies, who they went 15-4 against this year. And when we predict that series, I might highlight a certain Mets broadcaster who was aware of their bad fundies, which did not improve after he pointed it out. Their atrocious bullpen. So I think you would have wanted that. And then I think the Mets went 2-7 against the Padres in the regular series. And you can throw that stuff out a little bit because, the year that when they went to the World Series in 2005, they hadn't won any regular season games against the Cubs, but then they swept them in the championship series. So it depends on how it matches up in the time. But they had really bad at bats, especially against Yu Darvish. So Devin, is this like more Mets, just like, oh, well, we get into, not only do we only get in the wild card, but it's a team that you can't buy a hit off of. Does that feel like doom and gloom, or is it perhaps informed, realistic doom and gloom?
I don't know. I'd be curious to hear what David says about the New York vibes. I was not particularly worried about either of them, San Diego or Phillies, especially Phillies. I mean, they're just not a good baseball team. And I realize the whole 15-4 going against them sort of sets the Mets up for disaster. They just stink. I'm sorry. They shouldn't be a playoff team. They're not a good team. They're like the bad, incompetent at baseball version of the Braves, basically. They're, which is exactly what the Phillies should be, an inferior version of something else. And so I would have loved to have had them. I'm a little bit more nervous about the Padres, but I realized we had a tough time against them, but they never scared me. I was never afraid of the Padres.
No one is ever afraid of the Padres.
And I feel fine about them. We've got Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer healthy. And, Jake has had a weird issue with the Braves for a while. I think it's because they have 9 power hitters who can hit 100-mile-an-hour fastballs. But I'm not as concerned about him here. I'm not as concerned about Max in this context. In fact, I really like Max in this context. And Yu Darvish has owned us, but it's really hard to own guys 3 games in a row. It's just really, really hard. Unless your name's Mike Scott, it usually doesn't happen against any team.
Right, but you have to be scuffing the ball to be able to do that. So Well, Devin made a good point, David Brody. Was there a feeling in New York of like, oh man, how come we're not playing the Phillies? Or is it just like, all right, is it considered to be kind of about the same competition wise?
Oh, I think we'd all rather play the Phillies. In fact, there was a proposal a year or two ago where they were bandying about the prospect of teams being able to pick their playoff opponents. And then they were worried that teams would be offended by that. I think if the Mets had that option, they absolutely would have picked the Phillies. They own Wheeler. Wheeler looks like a number 5 starter at best against the Mets. And I'd like to face Syndergaard in the playoffs for sure. So yeah, I mean, the Phillies' biggest strength is their stadium. You know,
they got good food there.
They're bad at baseball.
Yeah,
they're bad at baseball.
They are, Keith.
But their biggest strength is the fanatic. In all honesty, you know,
Yeah,
I mean,
always has been.
He had an MVP caliber season.
Every season.
Did. Yeah,
every season, world's most valuable mascot.
But I actually know that between both Wheeler and Nola were 0-9 against the Mets this year. So that was obviously encouraging. But yeah, I think that you don't look at the Padres as in like, oh, you can't get hits off of them. The Dodgers are obviously a better constructed lineup than the Mets. But boy, they sure don't have any trouble scoring runs off of any of those guys. No. You know, so. Yeah, it's funny because I think just because of that track record, the Mets had success against the Dodgers in the regular season. So I was at a couple of those games. So I see the way that they measure up, and you feel like the competition is sort of on the right page. And it's going to just depend on, I think it is legitimately an advantage that the Mets aren't playing this game in San Diego, not because of their fan base who, will have all of their City Connect jerseys that look like a bowl of sherbet with a price tag still on it. It's really just, they don't hit in that stadium very well. It must be the dimensions. I don't know, David Weiss. I don't know how many times we've gone down there. We had one good game that DeGrom started for the Mets there last year. But other than that, it's like they usually lose. So going into it, I feel good. Now, does anybody feel, of the five of us, does anybody feel like, oh, no, the Padres got this? Does anybody feel like the Padres are likely to emerge from this series?
Emerge? No. No. By the way, Flobo fact, I was there for the Bartolo home run game. So
was I. I was sitting with the 7 line. That was my then 1-year-old son's first baseball game. Was the Bartolo Colon home run.
That's amazing.
I thought about never bringing him to another game again because what was going to ever be better than that?
I blew my voice out with the third inning. I don't think we're going to lose against San Diego, but both Snell and Darvish, it's going to be a lot closer than it's going to be a nerve-wracking series.
Those guys aren't bums.
They're not bums, but they somehow they take that Miami Marlins pill when they play us, and they're damn near elite. And it's still going to be close games. It's going to be close games.
I think the bullpen is a big advantage against San Diego. I mean, honestly, the back end, the closer is there's no team where I'm like, oh, they're better off. They have a better closer. And Josh Hader is still the Padres closer, and he has had an atrocious season. So I like the odds in that series. I do actually feel as though the Mets matching up against the Dodgers in the NLDS is better that it's a short series. A 7-game series, I think, you have to stretch your pitching a little thinner, especially this year with removing the off days. So the fact that I don't think that they would win 3 straight, but this idea that in the wild card round, the Mets are going to start Scherzer on Friday, Bassett on Saturday, hoping that they win those 2 games. So then, again, this is Buck with his 3-level chess, saving DeGrom. And then if you need him to win the 3rd game, you use him. You don't hesitate to do that. But if you win the first 2, great, you've already got him. Then Scherzer would be able to go in game 2 of the NLDS. But that's a lot of what if. And that's the infuriating thing about Buck Showalter is all the what if. David Weiss, what are you trying to say?
Well, we were talking about this off the air, but I don't understand. If you have the best pitcher in baseball, why don't you pitch him? I can't get around that logic. What are you saving him for? I mean, the Padres aren't a pushover.
But is it because you also have the 1A best pitcher in baseball? No,
I think it's the whole reason. Well, not the whole reason, but you have Scherzer, so it's DeGrom and then Scherzer. You don't have to be Connie Mack to figure that out. And I just, I am stunned that Epler and Buck have come up with this idea that, we're going to save him. Saving him for what? What if Darvish goes out and throws 7 innings of no-hit ball. It's entirely possible.
Then you have DeGrom on game 3. You know,
That's
I
right.
mean, Bassett's going to need to win a game in that scenario.
lit
up,
I would rather go
gets lit up. You have DeGrom come in. It's all hands on deck, right? So if the Mets find themselves down, you know, the Mets find themselves losing game 1 and in the 6th inning or in the 4th inning, and they're trailing, and Bassett is struggling. Get DeGrom out there. We need to,
See, I think a lot of this is going to happen.
Well, let me interject, David, to Devin's point. I think that Bassett start, you've got Taijuan Walker loose already. And if he falters like he did in Atlanta, then Walker comes in
Walker
the 3rd.
comes right in, right.
Yeah. So I think that's the advantage in this series. Walker wouldn't get a start. You feel more confident in him than you do in Carrasco. But I don't know. I think that we feel like, while we might question the machinations of it, and just in the interest of moving it along, and I know, Devin, you're going to have to go soon, so I want to follow the Mets projection from here. So, Devin, I'll ask you first. Getting past the Padres, what about the Dodgers and the NLDS? How do you feel about that matchup?
Stupidly optimistic. Like, the kind of stupid optimism where you're like, I'm doing something stupid.
Right.
I know I'm doing something stupid.
Like when I open my eyes in the morning.
Yeah. Stupidly optimistic. I very much agree with you that a 5-game series helps. I mean, look, if you're going up against a 110 win team, the shorter the series, the better your chances, right? Like it's you want the randomness of a short series, not the unrandomness of a long series against what is probably a superior team, especially if the shortness, allows us to take advantage of the one clear advantage we have over the Dodgers, which is the front of our rotation. Yes. Right. The front of our rotation is the one advantage we have over that team.
Right. If you can't press it.
Well, let me, and I'll just add that they also, with Craig Kimbrell as their closer with air quotes.
Yes. Sorry. Two advantages. Sorry. Yeah. 2 advantages. Sorry. Yes, you're right. I feel weirdly good about that series.
I maybe it's because I live here that it makes me nervous. I feel good about that series. They did, they beat the Dodgers in 5 in 2015. I was there for game 5. I did zip up my sweatshirt and take my hat off while I walked through the parking lot, and I celebrated in the car. But, I was still there for it, and it was a great moment. So just to follow this through for Devin, and then we'll all circle back and the rest of us will talk about it. So in the NLCS, I would say that they would meet up with the Braves or the Cardinals. And I mean, if you're a Mets fan, you don't want either part of that. Who do you think is more likely to emerge from and we're just discounting the Phillies entirely because, as established, bad at baseball. Yeah. So who do you think is more likely to emerge from Cardinals Braves series? The Cardinals played them really well during the regular season. They won a series against them in August, thanks to a spectacular meltdown from Kenley Jansen. Do you feel, though, that the Braves are better than the Cardinals, or what is your thought? And how do you think the Mets match up with either one of them, whoever it might be?
I think all roads go through Atlanta. Yeah. I mean, I think all roads go through Atlanta. I think they're probably the best team in baseball. The Dodgers, so I respect the Dodgers, but I think Atlanta's the best team in baseball.
Dodgers playing a weak division.
Yeah, I think, I think Mets fans, unfortunately, look, I'm stupid enough to believe that we're going to win the World Series. I really do believe that. But we're not winning the World Series without beating Atlanta. Mets fans, the only way out here is through. So that horrifies me and terrifies me. I don't want to play St. Louis because, of course, I don't want to play St. Louis. But I think we'll beat that team. I feel like that team is like, there's a lot of 40-year-old nostalgic mojo driving them through the end of the season, and I'm not sure how much longer that can go.
Yeah, agree with David Weiss. It doesn't cut it in the playoffs.
So I mean, that obviously means we will lose to them in 7 games with Wainwright striking us out on 3 pitches again. But
I don't even know how Aaron Heilman's going to get on the roster, but he's going to be there. It's inevitable,
Yeah.
Or it could just be like, wait, why? Who decided Aaron Heilman should throw out the first pitch of that game? Like,
Yeah, that would be a very Metsy thing to do, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
it would
it would. You know,
Yeah.
here's Dwyer Sanchez. You know, let's just bring back all the memories.
So
just took a
in the
cab here.
hypothetical that the Mets make it to the World Series, they would actually have the advantage over any team except the Astros. But I think the Astros are most likely to be their opponent. The fact that they lost all their games against the Astros during the regular season, I don't think measures into it as much of the fact that, you know, Verlander's going to be out there. But if you're throwing healthy pitchers to match up against him, who knows what happens? What would you think, Devin, in terms of the American League opponents, if they were able to make it to the World Series, the Mets, who do you think they match up with the best? I mean, you don't have to go through all of them because I don't think most of us think the Guardians will be in the World Series this year. Or honestly, I don't think the Rays or the Blue Jays will either.
Well, actually, maybe, and then since I'm running out of time, maybe I can leave you with this parting horror. Can I paint a picture of what I
Please
think is
do.
gonna
Oh my
happen?
God, yeah.
Yes.
It is October. Yeah, why not?
You have a whole
versus-
book about painting horror for Mets fans. Which
Yeah, so
for our
here's what I
audio
think is
listeners,
gonna-
I'll mention again when we say goodbye. Go ahead.
Here's what I think is going to happen, and bearing in mind that the reality will surpass anything any of us can come up with, right? We know that. But what I think is going to happen is that we will be playing Cleveland in the World Series, and that we will lose in 7 games on an Ahmed Rosario single up the middle to score
off of DeGrom.
off of DeGrom or Scherzer or Bassett, somebody that
or
makes
Diaz.
way too much money and is going to drive in the second baseman whose name I can't even remember that we traded in the Lindor trade. That's how we're going to lose. Is
That's
Rosario
very Mexian.
scores are the second baseman we gave up. Jimenez, that's his name. Jimenez.
Andres Jimenez, right?
Is going to drive him in off of Max Scherzer, and it will be Cleveland's first World Series victory since God knows when, and it will lift the curse that held over them because of their racist nickname,
Yeah.
and everyone will be happy in the entire world except us.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
it will end.
Yeah. It's
I
really
wanna-
just
let me base myself in that pain.
just regional areas of New York will be unhappy because Yankee fans would, of course, be very happy to see the Mets lose to the Indians. Yeah, the curse of Chief Wahoo will be lifted. So, Devin Gordon, thank you for joining us. So many ways to lose. The amazing true story of the New York Mets, the best, worst team in sports. I do think that just general baseball fans would enjoy the book. It is definitely catered towards Mets fans, but I think anybody who likes sports books will appreciate it. Honestly, if you hate the Mets, you'll enjoy reading some of the greatest hits, you know. But Devin, you know, let's see if and by the way, if exactly that happens in the World Series against the Indians, I'm sorry, the Guardians, we'll have to have you back just to be like, how did you know? You know, and I'll be convinced you're a time traveler.
Well, we might as well book the date now. We might as well just book it right now, November 7th or whatever it is. It is written.
Yeah. And if people want to keep in touch with you, are you X Devin Gordon on Twitter, or did I?
It's Devin Gordon X.
I was so close. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Devin, we really appreciate it. And thanks for giving us some time.
Thanks, guys.
And,
it was really fun.
Yeah.
Best of luck to us all.
Yes, exactly. May the odds forever be in our favor. Thank you.
Take it easy,
Devin
guys.
Gordon. So we'll circle back now. David Brody, let me start with you.
Yes.
How do you feel about the idea of, I mean, I think we're all okay with the Padres. I mean, look, do I think that the Mets could not win either of those games? Yes, it's a possibility. Of course, it's a 3-game series. But do you feel as though they're capable of matching the Dodgers in a 5-game series? Do you agree with me and Devin that it's better than a 7-game series? David Brody, your thoughts?
Well, I think it's obvious you don't want to go 7 games. Yeah, a 5-game series. I think they held their own during the regular season with the Dodgers. I think not having Walker Buehler is a huge plus. And, you know, Kershaw in the postseason, we all know he has a pretty bad track record. And so I like the idea of the Dodgers in a 5. I think you have to at least split in LA and then come home and take 2 at City. If you want to start the playoffs right. But yeah, I'd love to have a 5-game series, but that's not an option. So 7 games. I think the Mets are deeper in starting pitching. I like their closer, obviously better than the Dodgers closer. I think the bullpen, if they all show up the way they have at their peak, I think they have a shot. I think they have. I know this is going to sound weird. I think they have a better shot against the Dodgers than they do against Atlanta or St. Louis.
So I definitely agree with Atlanta. I do think Atlanta is constructed in a way that honestly, Atlanta's starting pitching is better than the Dodgers for what they're going to be able to run out. Not guys hurt on their roster. Right. Walker Buehler, that's a huge loss. It's a huge loss. So especially the way he's pitched in the playoffs.
Is Gonsolin healthy?
Yeah, I believe he started this week. I think one of those tune-up starts for like 2 innings.
He's probably penciled in for a 5-inning start all throughout the playoffs.
I would think that's fair. Okay. Well, Flobo, like David and myself, you're here in Los Angeles, so you can kind of get the vibe. I through not exactly through choice, but I see the Dodgers in person more than I see a lot of other teams. How do you, Flobo, feel about how the Mets match up with the Dodgers and what would be the NLDS starting on Tuesday at Chavez Ravine?
For the record, I try to go to Dodgers games at least. It's a dump, man. I hate that place. It's hard to get to, hard to park, hard to get out of, and the tickets are expensive. But that's a good question.
And the food
when people post their pictures that they're sitting in blue heaven, because that's what Tommy Lasorda called it, I'm like, man, if that's what heaven is, definitely sign me up for Beelzebub and the hoarding depths of brimstone and hellfire, because that is not heaven.
No,
that is it's
not at all.
Yeah, it's like situated. David Brody, have you ever been to Dodger Stadium?
I have not, but now I don't think I want to.
You don't, but it's like it's beautiful the way it's nestled into the hills.
Yes.
Although Google how they basically knock down houses and drag people out of that community so that they can build it.
Yes.
And what contingent of the locals were never Dodger fans because of that, until Fernando Valenzuela came along and changed their minds. But anyway, your thoughts on the matchup, Flobo, between Mets and Dodgers?
It's pretty solid. I thought I was afraid of the Dodgers, like just the top of the season until the series we saw. One of the cool things about, or the lame things about the New York Mets this season is that our hero always changes, that we don't have a Freddie Freeman every day. I mean, it's Lindor today, it's Canada the next day. It was Starling Marte for a while. Escobar got hot. It really becomes a moving target for Los Angeles. So I do think we have the advantage there. So I'm looking forward to that one. Hopefully it gets to that.
I was just Devin thanked me for having him on and said it was super fun. May God have mercy on our souls is how he I think that the Dodgers are the elite lineup. To me, it is harder to get them to swing at bad pitches than the Braves. Even in that disastrous series in Atlanta, the Braves struck out significantly more than the Mets did. It didn't matter because they had key home runs and moments where they mattered. Not that game one Nito home run that really didn't change anything. You gotta hit them when they matter. So David, as also someone who you see more Dodger games than I do, you actually have the cable channel. I do not have it. No. I only use a VPN twice a year so that I can watch the Mets play the Dodgers. Sometimes I might listen to them on the radio when I'm in the car, but I don't actually try to watch them other than when I'm at the stadium. But what do you think, David Weiss, the matchup between the Mets and Dodgers?
I think it's pretty even. I think the Dodgers play in a very weak division, so that they won 108, we won 101. Those 7 games is from playing Arizona and Colorado all those times of the year.
Let me interject.
Sure.
The Dodgers ended the series with 6 straight games at home against Colorado because of the 3 games from the beginning of the year.
Right.
And it was just like, what if those games had mattered in any way?
Right.
Then they get 6 games against the Rockies. Yeah.
Right.
So it's
right. Yeah. And the Dodgers starting pitching in a short series, Gonsolin, Kershaw, Urias. Okay, pretty good. as good as Scherzer, DeGrom, Bassett, maybe. Dodgers they're stone cold killers. And I think that's an advantage they have over the Mets is that we're a little bit tired at the moment, and we have holes in the lineup at DH and catcher, and the Dodgers don't. So in a short series, I'm not so sure. In a longer series, I think our pitching would play out.
Yeah. David Brody, I feel like if the adage is true that good pitching beats good hitting, then the Mets have the advantage mostly because of the bullpen. If you're keeping the game close and Diaz comes out for 2 innings, Kimbrel for a third of an inning with a 7 ERA is not going to necessarily cut it. And I'm so glad that he plays the song from Frozen and his record's been better since then. He's still pitched like dog shit. I have seen enough highlights of Dodger games where without a crazy Mookie Betts play where he either climbed up a wall or like dove and face planted with his arm out, making a catch where Craig Kimbrel would have given up 3 or 4 runs. So yeah, it's and look, they field really well. They have great players on that team. I mean, they have Trey Turner.
Trey Turner's a great player. Mookie Betts is a great player.
Yeah, and Freddie Freeman, great player, by the way.
There's 3 guys that the Mets don't have. So
yeah. When there was the high point of the season, which was when the Mets had they won 4 out of 5 games against the Braves at home. What did I say to you, David Weiss, right after? Freddie Freeman was in that lineup. They would have been lucky to win 1.
Yes. Yes.
But David Brody, your thoughts?
Yeah.
Mets, Dodgers in the NLDS.
Well, when you go through the pitchers like you did, I think the Mets have a good chance. When you go through the hitters, I get worried because I don't know which Mets lineup's going to show up. We talked about Starling Marte not being in the lineup, which is, you don't realize how big of an impact he has, but they move everybody up in the lineup. It throws everything off. And I think it exposes Mark Canha. I really do, because your second best hitting outfielder after Nimmo is Canha. And he had his season, the announcers like, oh, he's steady. He's a bad Michael Conforto season. If Conforto had Canha's stats, we'd say he had another bad season. And so I think the Mets lineup is devoid to the point where I know this is going to sound crazy. I would start Nito, but I would make Alvarez in catcher because I don't think McCann catches well anymore, and he's not a major league hitter. And I think if Alvarez swings 1 out of 10 times and hits a double or a home run, that's better than Canha, who can't get the ball out of the infield. So I think the Mets have a better lineup if they're all hitting. I think they can hold not a better lineup. I'm sorry, a better starting rotation, better bullpen. And if the lineup can score 3 or 4 runs, we got a shot. But if you look at the lineup, the bottom half is dreadful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
And if they bat Alonso second, I think
it never
he's got
works.
no one to drive in. Never
Yeah,
works.
he doesn't have any of his home runs
7, 8,
from that
9.
second spot. Yeah. But
and then you have
you're right.
Who's he going to knock in? The 7, 8, 9 hitters who don't get on base.
Right.
So
that's what I was gonna. That was exactly the point I was going to make, David Brody, was that the 7, 8, and 9 has been so bad, and then you mix in a bad DH spot a couple batters before that. There are good hitters in the Mets lineup, but they're all bunched together, and you need like Escobar to have that like 4-for-4 game, and I don't know if you can count on it. Let's take a look at the other part of the NL bracket. So I think every one of us has turned the page on the Phillies when we were still talking to Devin. I don't think that they win a game against the Cardinals. I just don't think they have I think they could take a lead into the middle innings.
Well, I'm Schwarber can hit a leadoff home run. They can lead 1-0 in the 4th, and then that'll be it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I don't think that they match up well against the Cardinals, even though I don't, the Cardinals, I mean, their most consistent pitcher was the guy that the Yankees got rid of. And
Hudson, right?
No, that's not Hudson.
Oh, right.
I got to look up what his name is. I thought it was going to come to me while I was talking, and then it didn't.
Right.
Is that Matt Carpenter, or is that a hitter? I don't know.
Carpenter is on the Yankees.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the wrong guy. Anyway, they traded a starter who pitched really well for them.
Montgomery.
Yeah.
Montgomery,
that's-
yes, right.
Yeah. And the Cardinals pitching coach was like, wait, why don't you ever throw this pitch? Oh, because the Yankees didn't want me to. And he's been infinitely better because he's worked in an extra pitch.
Right.
So that would mean that the Cardinals advance to the Braves. And as much as I hate the Cardinals, and for years I've thought they're overrated, I don't think they beat the Braves in a 5-game series.
What if they did though?
I would prefer it if they did, but I gotta pick somebody, and they can't.
But what
both
if things
move on.
happen that don't supposed to happen?
Yeah. What if they did?
Yeah. So it's like, yes, the preferred, fire to jump into would be the Cardinals. But oh boy, just think about whatever. I think the NL is on Fox. Just the montages of Pujols and Molina. And Pujols doesn't bother me, but Molina. I'm so glad Molina didn't hit 700 home runs in his career. Pujols, it doesn't bother me as much.
Wow. I don't have that much heat there, Kristen.
There's heat. Yeah. But what do you think, Flobo? You're saying, what if it does happen? Do you think that the Cardinals could beat the Braves in a 5-game series? I mean, obviously they could, but is that your official Flobo
I
lock
do
it
think
in?
so. Oh, whew, Flobo, lock it in. That's
Stone cold pick of the week.
Oh, you know what? Like I said in the chat earlier, I said if it's going to be one upset this postseason, it's going to be that. And I think for a lot of the reasons why I think the Mets have an advantage is that the Cardinals are old and they're not necessarily the most dynamic baseball. In fact, I always tell people if you never watched baseball before and have one game to convince you to love it, I would not put on a Cardinals game. But you know what? That will be the upset. I'll put money on. I'll put the Cardinals win this one. It won't be easy. It's not going to be a blowout or anything like that. But the Cardinals stunned the Braves.
Well, the Braves don't play a lot of organizations with the resources to scout them well. And you can get them to swing at bad pitches. I mean, unfortunately for the Mets, Matt Olson's, just dire, like 0 for 40 or whatever it was. And I'm exaggerating, but it ended right before the Mets rolled into town. But you can definitely, you can figure out ways to get them out. I could see the Cardinals doing it. I just think the Braves getting some nice rest, especially assuming that Spencer Strider would pitch in that series, to have Fried, Strider, and Wright, who won 21 games. I don't see the Cardinals rising to that occasion, but I do know that there'll be a few fly ball outs from off of Pujols' bat. Oh, wait, Joe Buck doesn't call those games anymore. So you know what? That's not going to happen. But what do you think, David Brody? Cardinals, Braves, where your gut could be one thing, but your heart could say something different.
Well, I can't argue with anything that's been said. And I think I'm guilty of recency bias, but after watching the Braves destroy the Mets last weekend, I have to say if that same Braves team shows up, I don't see the Cardinals beating them. I would love for the Cardinals to beat them. I'm going to root for Wainwright, which is a first, but I can't see that team. I can't. I'd love for Pujols to strike out on a curveball, but I don't see the Cardinals getting past the Braves, and it would be just the Mets' luck to beat the Dodgers and then have to lose to the Braves. Beat the mighty Dodgers and then lose to the Braves again.
In my heart.
That would be a very Metsy turn of events. But by the way, let's just go with the hypothetical. It's not my official pick, but were the Braves to advance to the NLCS and it was against the Dodgers, this would be the playoffs where I'm all in on Freddie Freeman and just rooting for him to go 6 for 6. And that's the one series where the Braves would be the road team, an NLCS against the Dodgers. David Weiss, how do you think the Cards and Bravos match up?
I think they match up pretty evenly, to be honest with you. I don't think you guys are giving Goldschmidt and Arenado enough credit. They've both had tremendous years. They're not there by accident. The Cardinals.
They're there because of how bad the Brewers were in the last.
Oh yeah, they're pretty awful.
That's true. The Brewers were pretty bad, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, their starters after Wainwright, who's 50 or 60 years old. They don't have a lot there. I couldn't name one bullpen arm. I recall seeing that Tyler O'Neill was hurt, and he's a decent player. Braves are probably going to win that, but I don't think it's going to be a walkover.
No, I don't think it would be a walkover. I think that there are ways where they match up well. I know that the Cardinals closer is Gallegos because of the fact that the Mets scored 7 runs off of him in a save situation. So yeah, some things will stick with you.
Yes.
But yeah, so what my heart wants me to lock in is that the Mets would beat the Braves in the NLCS, which
is
is
distinct possibility.
I mean, the way that they played them earlier in the season, I mean, they did win 9 games against them this year.
Yeah.
And they dominated them at that series.
This is a new season. Forget everything.
Yeah.
We can beat those guys.
But if the Mets are out earlier, then I'd be all in on the Dodgers to beat the Mets, and then I honestly don't care after that. I would not care who won the World Series if it meant that the Braves didn't advance.
I'm kind of jumping ahead, but if and I hate to say this, but if the Mets don't get to the World Series, I'm rooting for Houston, not for the fact of the Astros, but I want Dusty Baker to get one. So that is
it is crazy. There's a lot of things to not like about Dusty Baker, just his managerial style. I mean, giving the game ball to Russ Ortiz in the 2002 World Series in the 6th inning. There's moments where you feel like guys kind of deserve what they get, but I mean, he's just sitting there chomping on those toothpicks for like what feels like 40 years now. Like my whole life, I feel like I don't remember. I honestly don't remember him as a player. I only remember him as a manager chewing those toothpicks.
Yeah, Showalter too. They're both old men. That's his career.
They are old men. Yeah. So I think that's where we stand as we, and we'll do our World Series pick once we work our way through the American League bracket. So we've got the series that has the plum 9 a.m. Pacific time start, 12 Eastern, the Rays and the Guardians in the wild card series. I think that the Guardians are kind of like a fun feel-good story because they are so young. They're the youngest roster in all of baseball, and they made the playoffs. They won a division title. So credit to them for that. I think Francona has a lot to do with that. I think he is a very, I think he's a good manager. But I do think that the Rays have just the kind of pitching that make it tough for them. But does anybody feel the Tribe in that series out of the 3 of you? Flobo, you're nodding. Do you feel the Tribe over the Rays?
I'm saying, yeah. You know what? It on paper, everything is Tampa Bay. We're talking about up top. They're the stronger team. They're the most dynamic team. They have a better chemistry. But what I like about you mentioned the youth of the Guardians, and I was sold by Devin, man. How cool would it be for everyone's like, well, no, they're the Indians, and then the Guardians actually advance. It's like, we're Guardians fans.
Yeah, no, I know. Imagine that is like, the 1 year that it'd be like if if the Guardians win the World Series and the Commanders win the Super Bowl, it's just like they both have to be like, oh, wait, so we just needed to stop being racist like 30 years ago. Is that really what we needed to do? And then all of a sudden, Atlanta won a World Series last year, but you might see a lot less of this,
right?
If all of a sudden, yeah.
That needs to be done. Shout out to Chief Nakahoma. Those things need to be removed. But they won't go all the way to Devin's point. But how cool would it be if they did advance and said, "Hey, look, we went farther than anyone else as the Guardians." The logo sucks, but I'm fine with the name.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah.
You imagine the Guardians play the Braves.
Yeah. Oh, that's a massacre right there.
Yeah, because they're
and then the Guardians are like, look at those guys with the racist name.
Yeah, that was the one that the Braves won before last year was 95 against Cleveland, and that was like that was the Native American with the tear World Series. That the other AL series in the wild card is Mariners and Blue Jays, and I'm all in on the Blue Jays in that, mostly because the Mariners had so many injuries like in the last week. They got Rodriguez back, and then they had a couple other guys that literally got hurt down the stretch. Those games are in Toronto. So, the home runs only count 75% compared to home runs hit in America. So you're going to have a run differential. There's going to be a lot of math involved. But I like the Blue Jays in that series. I think that, I don't know, just to me, I don't see the Mariners making the playoffs for the first time in 21 years. And, they made a good splash at the trade deadline. They got Luis Castillo, not the Luis Castillo that the Mets had, who missed a pop up at Yankee Stadium. That we're still waiting to come down. But anyway, so what does anybody feel the Mariners in that series?
Moving on.
The Phillies of the American League? No.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. It's a beautiful stadium. I've only ever taken a tour of it.
Hey, you're the Phillies of the American League.
Yeah. And then ultimately, when it comes to the wild card series, I don't think it matters who wins.
No.
Because I think the Yankees and Astros are going to meet in the championship series. I don't see any of those teams, like the Yankees, as flawed as they are, they can win 3 games against any of those teams,
Easy.
without
showing up.
Yeah, right. They'll just have the grounds crew, the YMCA grounds crew, and that guy Freddie Says, and that's who they're going to run out on the field. And there's going to be no players. It'll just be John Sterling and Susan Waldman taking ground.
I'd like to see that.
What do you think, David Brody? You're in New York. I'm sure that Yankee fans are very confident. They probably also think Aaron Judge will hit 62 home runs in the playoffs as well.
It's like 10 at bats.
Yeah, well, Yankee fans are always confident, even when their team's bad. So I think they think they're going to win. I think the Blue Jays will give them a run for their money. I don't think the Yankees have the consistent pitching. And I love the Blue Jays lineup, but I think you're right. I think ultimately it will be the Yankees Astros, in which case I think it's the Astros. I don't think Garrett Cole is enough of a rotation, and Nelson Cortez, right?
Yes.
Nestor Cortez.
Is his last name? No, right. Nestor Cortez. Thank you. Nestor. I knew it didn't sound right. Nestor Cortez has been pitching great. So I like them in a short series. I don't like them in a long series with the Astros. I think Yankees, Blue Jays, I give the Blue Jays 20% chance. Yankees, Astros, I give the Yankees 30% chance, but that's being generous. I mean, the Astros own them. So
the Yankees don't match up well against elite starting pitching. They do well against mediocre starting pitching. The 2 games that the Mets won, that the Mets did win.
Mediocre.
Yeah. And the idea that Garrett Cole is considered any team's ace with his like 4.5 ERA, his ERA that went up 2 runs last season after he had to stop cheating. And yes, I've talked about that on the show. It's
cheating. You're right.
Is his ERA above 4?
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to look, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Because in the American League, an ERA above 4 is considered all right.
But now the National League is
350
2022.
So it's 350. All right.
Okay. Well, that's not bad.
That's not as bad as I thought it was.
No.
Flobo poking holes in my theory, but that's all right.
I mean, he's still trash. I'm just saying.
I think Verlander wouldn't need to go twice in an ALCS against the Yankees because you don't need a 5th game. I don't, that those games would start in Houston, not in that little league park that the Yankees play in. It's a home run friendly park there in Houston, but I also don't think that Aaron Judge hits another home run this year. I think it really wore on him. He's going to hit a lot of doubles, get a couple of singles, a bunch of walks, but I think that's a guy who's spent,
I don't think so. Maybe mentally, but he's got a week off to recover now.
That's true. Before we move on with, I guess, the final matchup, does anybody think that any of these teams who are getting a bye in the first round, which is the Astros, the Yankees, the Braves, and the Dodgers, do you think any of them are likely to come out like a little bit rusty because, they're getting like 5 extra days? I think it helps. I don't necessarily think, I wouldn't be shocked if it happened, but I could see it, especially when you think about the fact that the Astros and the Dodgers haven't really played a meaningful game I don't know, in like 2 months already, So does anybody think, I'll ask you first, Flobo, do you think any of those 4 teams could actually struggle because they're getting so much time off?
Well, if you guys watched the half day of work that was the Mets game yesterday against the Washington Nationals, where like 7 starters were sat. Gary actually mentioned that. Ron Darling specifically mentioned that he was talking to Dusty Baker about how to keep that team warm the extra days off. It could be a blessing in disguise. I do think I'll be interesting to see what game ones look like in the LDS for these teams that got the buys for the new expanded format. And so I do think it's a problem that you weigh on someone. How do you keep yourself sharp? How many things can you simulate? How many things spot trips can you make in those 5 extra days? So the answer to your question, yes, I think everyone's going to be pretty much rusty.
Yeah, I agree. I think 5 is a lot. 3 is just enough.
Yeah.
5 is like, think about anything that you've been doing, and then, on a regular basis, day after day, grinding, and you get into a groove. And then suddenly there's 5 days off. It takes a lot to get back into that groove.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about it. And obviously we've seen that in the playoffs before. I mean, the double heartbreak for the 2006 World Series that the Mets did not make it to after 7 games was that the expectation was that Tigers team was so good that nobody could beat them. But then that Tigers team was off for like a week and the Cardinals just rolled them, So, it happens. It could happen, and it'll be interesting to see if it happens. So does anybody think we'll get anything other than Mets Astros for the World Series? If it's Mets Yankees, the Mets do have home field advantage, which I don't know how much people would want to tune into that series, but it's like it's more nightmarish than Mets facing the Braves again. It's like, a World Series against the Yankees. What do I need this in my life for? What do you think, as somebody who actually lives in the New York area still, David, if it were to be a Mets Yankees World Series, which I don't think any of us is predicting, but if it was,
it would be mayhem. I mean, it was mayhem here in 2000, and 2000 we were overmatched. The Mets didn't really belong in the series. They got lucky through the postseason run. But this year, the Mets belong on the field with the Yankees, and I give them a real shot of winning. So, it's the roller coaster, right? Because if you beat the Yankees, it's the greatest high of highs. And if you lose, it's another 20 years of the crap you grew up with, of being the second-class citizen. So I would rather beat the Yankees than anybody, but I would rather lose to the Indians or the Mariners than lose to the Yankees. So –
Guardians.
I don't want to lose to them.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Guardians. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I've been trying so hard. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that there's the talent level is there. I think any of the NL teams who make the World Series could beat the Astros. I think it's really hard. I think it's an uphill climb for whether it be the Mets, the Dodgers, the Braves. It's probably not going to be the Cardinals, but it could be. I don't see those matchups being favorable, and all indications are that the Astros aren't even cheating. So this would be like a real World Series win. This could be the one that you'd actually be proud about. I don't know. I would not feel good about that matchup. But the prospect of beating the Yankees in the World Series is a fun one, but
delicious.
Those days of I think the World Series starts on Halloween. Take my kids out to trick or treat, and I'm going to be, I went to I think it was Game 4 was on Halloween in 2015.
Oh, that must have been crazy.
I blew off my son's first Halloween. He doesn't remember.
He doesn't care.
I blew it off.
I took a picture of all of us in our family costume before I left. That's our Halloween picture from 2015. Nobody knows. Yeah, because he was Boo Berry, I was Count Chocula, and my wife was Frankenberry.
Wow. So did you table that to come up with that idea, or would somebody come up with that all?
We may have come up with that idea before we ever had kids. But,
well, they brought Fruit Brute back this year, so
I know Fruit Brute is back. That is pretty exciting.
I hate Halloween.
Fruit.
What don't you
Oh.
hate?
I don't hate the Mets, but I hate Halloween.
There are days where you definitely
Yeah,
you hated the Mets on Sunday night.
But it's
I
a
was
love
texting
hate.
with you. You hated the Mets on Sunday night.
I did, but I hate Halloween more. I hate Halloween.
Yeah, look, I think that
Frankenberry.
it's a great season. It'd sting if they won 0 games against the Padres and didn't advance beyond it.
Hey,
after
well, let's all
100
go
men.
to a pumpkin patch and do fucking what?
Watch the Mets
Big
game on my
pumpkins.
phone.
Pumpkin.
I've
You got me
I've got
started
YouTube
on
TV.
Halloween.
I can watch the Mets game on my
All
phone.
right, all right.
Nice.
Halloween.
Yeah. But and there's just a head scratching. I definitely disagree with Devin. I think that they could have really made a splash at the trading deadline. I don't think it's the root of all their problems. I just think that there could have been an impact that they didn't make.
You
that
didn't
other
have
teams,
to make a splash, but of those 3 holes, they closed none of them.
Yeah, I agree.
So-
yeah, I think
And
you
the,
know,
Sox, the Red
if
Sox
they had
made
got-
better moves.
the
Exactly.
Red Sox did make better moves.
I mean,
yeah.
if you had a catcher
Yeah.
who had an average OPS instead of Nito and McCann right now, we
Yeah.
would have won the division going away, and we'd be that much stronger.
Yep.
I'm not saying
But-
it has to be Wilson Contreras, but there were guys.
Well, we'll see. I know that, like I said, I gave you my scenario where I could root for the Dodgers, which would be against the Braves. And Flobo's all in on Dusty Baker if the Mets don't make the World Series. And, I think that that is a very likely scenario to play out would be Dusty Baker finally getting a ring and then just let the man retire. Like enough already. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
He was definitely a PR stunt hire. Let's be honest with it.
don't
He's a
turn into
fantastic
don't turn
baseball
into
mind.
Tony La Russa, who left in
yeah.
the middle of the season.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And I know that Cami Egan was in the chat earlier, and I know she's a shy Sox fan, but
That was my AL team growing up, so I respect that.
that's interesting. My best friend, who is the
I thought I was your best friend.
No, he was basically the reason I'm a Mets
No.
fan. His other team was also the White Sox. It's
Yeah.
fascinating. Actually.
Well, Frank Thomas is my guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're a lot older than you, so they're not Frank Thomas.
They beat the Yankees. How about that?
Yeah. In any case, it'll be, I think, look, I'm glad the playoffs are here. I like this added round of the playoffs. I wish the Mets weren't in it, but I like this added round because David Weiss knows my favorite day of the playoffs is always that first day when you have like 4 games.
4 games.
And
back
here
to
on the
back
West
to
Coast,
back
they
to
start
back
at
to back.
9 a.m. and they
So we
go
start-
until like 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And,
There's a lot of beer that can be drank in those hours.
a lot of
Or
one
iced
more
tea for
pitcher at
Christian.
Buffalo Wild Wings in Burbank.
We're not going to Buffalo Wild Wings.
We'll go to
Place-
Finney's.
We'll go to Finney. Buffalo Wild Wings is rough.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah,
It's
you kind of
rough.
go anywhere else to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Hey, by the way, totally not here or there. I am over here at brooklynboys.bigcartel.com. Totally some cool shirts I'm gonna pick up after the show.
Thank you.
Oh, all right.
Yes, sir.
yeah,
Thank you
I
for the
like
plug.
that
Very nice.
Flobo was manning the chat and promoting Devin's book. So many ways to lose, which I mean, look, all of you as Mets fans, it's like there's a lot of it that'll make you smile and make you laugh, and then you'll just like, I told him, because like when I interviewed him like a year and a half ago, I needed to finish. In my mind, I wanted to finish the book before I talked to him. So I was up at like 1 a.m. reading about the 2006 season, and then I couldn't sleep, and I was like, "Why the fuck did I do that?"
yeah. Carlos Beltran.
Yeah, it was rough. I felt like I took a called third strike, but in any case, this was fun. I love always doing this show. I don't know how much people appreciate. Look, the last few years we have not spent any time on the Mets on this show. We do in the preseason one, but in the playoffs one, there's usually no Mets.
We haven't had to. Yeah.
Yeah,
Not our fault.
Hey, Christian.
Yeah.
Christian, I don't know if anyone's compiled it, but I would love to see and maybe post a compilation of what our picks were at the beginning of the season and compare them to what actually happened.
I think that's a great point. I had the thought last week that I should do that, and then I didn't do it. So,
I had a thought though.
It counts.
Yeah,
so
good thought.
our
Good
picks,
thought.
our preseason picks. I remember that I picked the Braves to win the division. because I didn't want to. And I was probably thinking I was clever for some like reverse jinx or something, but joke was on me. It looked like the joke wasn't on me, but it sure was. But yeah, no, you're right. I want to go and kind of see what we thought. I mean, some of the boxes will probably be like, hey, I think the Astros are going to be pretty good this year. That some of that stuff will hold up. But yeah, I will go back and see what I can dig up. David, where can people find you? And you talked at the top of the show for Mets fans, but we can mention again where people will be able to find the 2022 Mets song and where they can find you in general.
Well, you can find the song. I'll have details at David Brody on Instagram and Twitter. As far as you can find me weekly on the Brooklyn Boys podcast, which is available everywhere. And thanks for the plug. You can get our merchandise at brooklynboys.bigcartel.com. And if you see this in time on Saturday, that's 2 days from now, right? At Comic-Con, October 8th at 1:00, I will be there signing my new five card series of Wacky Packages stickers that I wrote and helped design. They were a childhood favorite of mine, and I've been working with Topps for the past month or two. And so I have 5 Wacky Packages coming out. One of them, I'll give you a little heads up, a little advance, is a Count Chocula spoof called Couch Chocula, about a fat Dracula sitting on the couch drinking beer, and all the marshmallows are fat. And it says, "Now with fat marshmallow bodies like yours." So that's one of the ones coming out. So
I feel like you're speaking to me directly.
Yes, and
as I told David, I loved Wacky Packages as a kid. I stuck them on my dresser, much to my mom's chagrin.
Who didn't?
I had so many on there. I loved Wacky Packages. It was like
it
was like pre-Garbage Pail Kids, stickers for of gross out humor. Flobo Boyce, in addition to generating new content every day, where can people find you?
I'm over there on that Twitter at Flobo Boyce and at Instagram at Flopito, flopito.com. And if you want to get down with that pro wrestling, the MacMania podcast, a Spotify original presented by The Ringer. That's Bill Simmons, y'all. Available every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcast. MacMania is a podcast. Flopito.com is a website.
How's are you generating Star Trek content at the moment, or are you in on hiatus?
I'm in the pattern buffer. I'm in hiatus, yeah.
Okay.
But I am watching the Lower Decks. I'm trying to keep going myself current on that.
I know. I might dive into Lower Decks just to see Deep Space Nine. I'm not going to catch up on the previous 3 seasons. I might just watch the Deep Space Nine episode because I want to see it. But look. Some of us are still a little burned by Star Trek Picard. Although Brave New Worlds, I thought was great. So we'll see.
I feel David Weiss, like a Darmok thing. It's kind of like Christian's a hater, like
I was just a hater of Star Trek Picard. I don't hate the franchise. I just hate those 8 episodes.
I'm in Lower Decks, but Picard too.
Oh, no, I just haven't. I just haven't. Okay. It's like I don't need hijinks in my Star Trek. I'm like Spock. David Weiss, where can people find you?
Right freaking here, Christian, at D Weiss Comedy. It's my Twitter feed for all things Twitter.
For all things Salman, as they say.
All things Salman, yes.
Well, I hope
come to the dark side.
I hope that everyone watching this has a great playoffs, except if you live in one of the 11 states where your primary team is the Atlanta Braves. I hope you have a miserable, terrible season, that you fought so hard to get the division in the last week that you just got nothing left. There's nothing's in the tank. That's just what I hope. I don't think that's what's going to happen. But, a gal's got a dream. But very excited for tomorrow. And 9 a.m. Guardians Rays. Get ready. That's noon Eastern. But that's all the time we have for this installment. And we will see you next time on the Bladtcast, where we will dive into 2 of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life, possibly one of them being the worst movie ever made. Number 1, Don't Worry, Darling. Number 2, Rob Zombie's The Munsters. I mean, if there's a breakdown of the budget for that, I want to see it, because every line I'm going to say, bullshit, you didn't spend that much. Bullshit, you didn't spend that much. They didn't, I mean, his wife plays Lily, so he didn't even pay her, I'm sure, yeah, anybody that was even a mild fan of the Munsters, in which I only saw as reruns as a kid, Rob Zombie's the Munsters. I mean, it's one of the worst things I've ever seen. I saw a corpse once. This is worse than that.
Yikes!
Yeah, baby.
So join us next week for that, and we will see you next time on the Bladtcast.